I always start with an introduction, even though you guys are my people. Like, I know all of you, you know me. I've been doing this for a little while, but for the record, my name is Dana Moore, and I've been coordinating the MOPS group at New Hyde Park Baptist, and this has been my 4th year. We're at the end of my 4th year, which is kind of like shocking that it's been so long and that I've been here so long. This is actually the longest I've lived anywhere since I was 9 years old. So I feel like I've got some roots deep here, deeper than some of the other places that I've been. But I want to share a little bit about what my time in MOPS has been like and what God has shown me as both a mom that has attended and as a leader, because looking at it from this end, seeing my progress and my journey, I'm amazed by what God has done and what I've learned. And so I want to share that with you. Usually we do some kind of tea and testimony at the end of the year, and someone shares, and it's not always MOPS related. Some have shared about difficult pregnancies or other difficult times in their lives and how they were able to overcome that and what their journey was like and what they learned and what it took to get to where they stood. And I could give a testimony like that, but it's hard for me to think about anything else because I see my time as a coordinator coming to an end. And I'm flooded with this, wow, look at what God has done. Look at how far we've come. This has been my story during my time in New York. And so I want to share that with you. But I moved to New York in August of 2015, and my husband's in the Army. We came here for recruiting duty, so he came here to be a recruiter. So there isn't a large military presence here. There's no base that's right here. So it was a lot more isolating than other places that you can go. And when I came with one little baby and a 2-year-old. So I basically had 2 babies. I called them double babies because they were both young and demanded a lot of attention. And it was a really challenging time in my life because it's hard to move with kids. And I'll get into that a little more later, but it's one thing to move as a single person or as a married person without kids. Your ability to make connections and make friends is different. Your schedule is a lot more flexible, and once you have kids, you have to kind of cater your life around them. And so I wasn't quite prepared for how challenging this move was going to be. But we came and we found a church quickly, and I probably really early on, Blessing, who was running the MOPS group at the time, invited me to come to MOPS. At least I think it was her. I can't remember anymore who that first person was. But knowing Blessing like I do now, I'm sure that it was her who invited me. And I came, but I didn't come to the very first meeting in September because even at that time, it felt like everything was stacked up against me. And I was always like fighting uphill, trying to be able to come. And I mean, we had car issues. I was sharing a car with my husband at the time, and we had, toddler tantrums and nap issues, or something would go wrong. And I never knew what it was going to be. So I missed that very first meeting, my introduction to MOPS. I didn't get to see like, oh, this is what we do. I came in October, and I remember I basically threw my kids at the childcare workers. I was like, there's childcare? Like, yes, I don't care who they are. Like, they could be drug dealers and serial killers. Like, yes, take my kids. I don't care. I was just really eager for a break. My parents don't live anywhere near here, so I never had grandparents to come and take care of them. And I didn't really have any friends yet who I could say, hey, can I just go for a walk for an hour and my kids hang out with you? My husband was working really long hours, and so I was alone a lot. And I was also finishing my bachelor's degree online, and that's super hard to do when you've got 2 little kids climbing all over you. And so I was stressed, I was tired, and I got in, and I didn't care what MOPS was about. I'm like, I don't know what we're doing here. I just want a break from my kids. So the food on the table and the chance to have discussion, And to learn something or to hear, a video or a speaker on something, that was all bonus for me. We could have been walking into like, high flying practice for like aspiring circus performers. And I would have been like, cool, let's do it. I just needed some time away from my kids and to feel like a person. And I'm an extrovert. I roll into a new town and I'm looking for friends. Who's going to be my friend here? Who's going to go on coffee dates with me? Who wants to just sit on my couch and watch TV? Like anything sounds good. But it was harder with kids than I expected it to be. And so MOPS, said we provide connection and community for moms. That's part of our goal. And I was eager for that. I was ready for that. And so I came to MOPS and I was excited, but it was still very challenging because even just coming to the meetings felt like this uphill battle every single time. And so I probably came to 4 or 5 meetings that first semester because that was also the time when my kids got hand, foot, and mouth, and you can't be around other people when your kids are highly contagious. And we did have car trouble one time. I missed the Christmas meeting because we had car trouble. So I look back on that first semester when I was still trying to figure out what MOPS was, and I didn't really know what it was, but I was eager for connection with other people. And at some point in there, this is one of my favorite memories. I went to Target, of course, as I do. I left my kids with my husband, and while I was there, my phone rang, and I don't usually answer numbers that I don't know who it is, but I felt like I should answer. And on the other end of the line was Jane. And Jane is one of our discussion group leaders, even now. She's been a leader in MOPS, I think, for 6 years. And Glenn and Alice and I were talking, and I think that she's been in MOPS itself for 8 years. So she's one of our long timers. She's been here for ages. She's seen it through a lot of different phases. And she was my discussion group leader, and she called me and just wanted to check on me and see how I was doing. And I remember feeling so grateful and so seen and kind of flabbergasted that someone had noticed me and noticed maybe that I had been missing some meetings and just wanted to make sure that I was okay. And so that was my first real taste of like what MOPS was like, and my first taste of New York. These are some of the first friends that I was making, and I was still starting out and trying to figure things out. Fast forward to January, and Blessing invites me to go on a play date, and I'm like, yes, people, that sounds awesome. And so we went to a trampoline park, and our kids were bouncing and having a great time, and I was excited to be hanging out with a new friend. And at some point in the middle of our hangout, Blessing mentions to me that she's been leading for 6 years and that she's transitioning to help start another ministry at our church, Bible Study Fellowship, and that she's going to be stepping down as a coordinator from MOPS. And I was like, what? Wow, like that's huge. I guess congratulations, that's a big deal. And she's like, yeah, and I need someone to take over for me. And I was like, yes, you do. Oh, you mean me? You're asking me if I will be the coordinator for this group that I'm barely a member of, that I still don't really know what's happening. What? And I was shocked. I mean, like really, really flabbergasted and flattered. And I said, thank you. I thank for thinking of me. Like, I can't imagine why you would do that, because I could see from my perspective, I was a mess. I was a hot mess. I had 2 kids. My kids were then 1 and 2, or almost 1. And I was exhausted, and I was cranky, and I was tired, and I didn't feel like I was a good mom or a good wife. I was struggling. If I like laid all of the pieces of like who I am down on that table, I could show that this is a mess and this is but God led her to ask me. And there weren't a lot of other options, to be fair. It needed to be somebody from our church, and there weren't that many people. And I am sure that she was praying and praying and praying. And when I walked in the door, she was like, ha, because I was interested in ministry, and it was somewhat related to what I was studying in school. And so she thought, yay, the answer to my prayers. But I was like, this is not the answer to my prayers. I came to MOPS because I was in need of something. Like, I came here to receive. I am the one who like needs someone to pour into me and to help me because I am struggling so much in my life. The last thing that I want to do in my current situation is to like pour into someone else or to like take on new responsibilities. I want to sit down and do nothing and let someone else serve me because I'm tired. And like, when does it get to be about me? When do I get to have someone like, cater to my own needs? And I was coming from a really selfish place of like, I don't want to lead anything. I don't want to serve in anything. But I said, okay, I'll think about it. And I thought about it for about 5 minutes, and I looked at the chaos of my house, and I was like, it's going to be no. Like, I should not do this. I'm not even like the leader in my house. Like, I'm barely in charge of my little minions that I made. How could I possibly run something? It felt like the wrong season of life. It felt like the wrong person. It felt wrong timing, all around just wrong. And so I said, I don't think this is a good idea. It's probably a no. Let's go with no. And she was like, okay, well, maybe we could get you more people to help you. And I was like, I don't know. And so she went and she talked to other people. And so 2 other people stepped in and said, hey, we'll walk beside you. We'll help you. And it was Lisa Kolb, who's also been my co-coordinator for this whole time, and Karen Chavez, who wasn't a leader at the time, but saw the need for the ministry and was like, listen, I will do anything to help you continue forward. And so we became this like 3-headed coordinating monster, each with our own responsibilities. And I said, okay, let's try it. So we go into year 1. And I don't want to say I went in kicking and screaming, but I was dragging my feet. I just could not see how I could do this effectively. I felt like I was too much of a mess of a person, and you need to be like a little bit more together to be a leader. Like, you got to have your life kind of in order to lead well. And so I was worried, and I leaned heavily on my other leaders, and they were there. They were great, but it was still really hard. And by fall, I felt like I need to tell them that I'm not going to keep doing this. Like, they need to find someone to replace me because there's no way that I can continue doing this. And I totally broke down in a leaders meeting, and I was like, this is too hard. My kids are too young. I don't have enough support with my family and my life. My husband works all the time, and we have 1 car, and it ruins our whole day to drive him to work and pick him up from work. And all of this it's too hard. All of this is too hard. And my leaders, who were becoming my friends, gathered around me, and they prayed over me, and they listened to me, and they said, okay, like, if you can't do this next year, like, we'll figure something out. And they didn't make me feel like, strong-armed into anything. They were so supportive and encouraging, but the best thing that they did for me is they prayed over me, and they asked God for grace and help and encouragement and endurance and patience, everything that I needed to get through this, because I was trying to pull myself up by my bootstraps and get the job done. But my heart just wasn't ready, and I felt tired. The following spring, is actually February, there was a shift in my life and in how things were going. After that little breakdown, I came back and I kept working and kept trying to see how God was going to use this, even though I didn't feel like the right person. And we had a family tragedy in February. My husband's father passed away really suddenly. And it felt like just one thing on top of everything else. And so on top of, all these new responsibilities, now there was grief and, taking time away to deal with the funeral and the estate. And I couldn't have known then how significant that was going to be for the next several years, a lot of years. But from that situation, we got a second car. My husband inherited his dad's truck. And one of the big things that I felt like was keeping me from being able to serve effectively was that it took so much more effort just to be able to go to MOPS because I had to drive my husband around. That was no longer an issue. That was no longer a complaint. And so you never really want to exchange someone's life for their assets, but we don't know the number of our days, and we don't know how God uses those difficult situations. And so in this tragedy, we also received a blessing. And having that second car made the rest of that year really different for me. And my youngest son turned 2, and that also changes some things. He was a little older. And when we got to the end of the year, I realized I did it. We did the whole year, and we learned how to do it better. We had a struggling beginning. I didn't really know what I was doing at the beginning, and we figured some stuff out. And when I got to May, I thought, okay, I survived this. This wasn't so bad. Maybe I'll give it another year and see if I can really do well in my second year. And so the second year comes along, and it was a lot better. I felt willing to try new things, to step out. Instead of paring things down like we did our first year, we really cut back on a lot of meetings and tried to keep things super simple, super streamlined, so that it wouldn't be really stressful to a new team coming in. Second year, we thought, let's try out some new stuff. Let's actually, come up with new ideas and better meetings. And so our second year is when I really started to see our ministry grow and also me grow. I could see, looking back, that God gave me more everything to be able to do what was in front of me. And instead of just seeing all of my obstacles and all of my weaknesses and all of the areas where I was not probably the best person to do this, I got to see how God was working in me. And so I came to MOPS looking for connection, and I thought that I was going to get it by just, hanging out and talking to people. And where I was really getting it was with my leaders and those phone calls and sitting around the leader table, and those people became my friends. And so it was what I was asking for, but it was a different angle than I expected to receive it. I was receiving what I needed by also giving what someone else needed. I was looking for growth. I did want to grow in other areas, but this wasn't the way that I thought I was going to get there. I thought having more alone time and more me time would help me to develop personally. I'd have more time to read books and, study the Bible and whatnot. And I thought that's what I need to be a better mother or a better Christian or whatever it is. And instead of me getting to sit and rest at home and kind of isolate, I got thrown into a bigger situation, and that is what brought about growth. And that is where I got to see change happening in me. So it wasn't isolated. It was more insulated with other people. So year 2 goes by, and by the end of year 2, I'm feeling it. It's like when you finally hit the chorus on a really good song. We've been building up for a while, but now this is awesome. This is where it gets good. So year 3 comes in, and I'm like, this is my jam. I started year 3 with so much passion and enthusiasm. I could finally see what God was doing in me and in our group, and feeling encouraged and feeling like I wasn't alone, and seeing myself grow. And I mean, the biggest thing is none of this was me. It wasn't that I stepped into this and I got really good at stuff. I was a mess, and I continue to be a mess. Don't be deceived. If you look at my house right now, it's a little alarming. I'm not a tidy person. I have 3 kids now. It's even more chaotic than it was at the time. It wasn't me that figured things out and made myself anything. It was God who equipped me for the work that he put me in. There is this quote that God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called, right? And that basically means you don't get chosen to do something because you're the best qualified, okay? He's not going to look at your resume and be like, wow, she's really organized. Wow, she is this or that. Obviously, I need to put her in this position. It isn't really like that. Over and over again in both the Bible and in life, you can see that God chooses people who are not the right person on paper. It's the weakest of all of the brothers who becomes King David. It is the woman who can't have children, who eventually surrenders to God, and he gives her a son, and that son is the best priest, Samuel. It's Mary, this ordinary girl, and there's nothing special about Mary. She was a virtuous woman, but she was not perfect. She was still human. She was a young girl. Nobody in that culture in that time was like, oh, this is the person who's going to help bring about the salvation of the world. No, but God said, I'm going to use you. You're going to be a tool in my hand, and I am what is going to make you effective and make you useful. Our theme for next year in MOPS is Decide to Rise. And in it, they use the story of Deborah, who was the only female judge for the nation of Israel. And so before Israel had kings, they have judges. They have people who lead the nation. And there's a lot of slavery and exile and uprisings. And so they have these judges who help them to get through all of these cycles of oppression and redemption. And Deborah is the only woman who does it. And her story is amazing. I highly recommend reading it. I can share the links in our Facebook page. But she rises up into a situation that it doesn't seem like where she should be, but she accepts the calling and she steps in and she helps her people. I'm giving really broad brush generalizations here, but my point is, I wasn't put in this position because I was like the best person for it. I did not have the organizational skills. I did not have a lot of discipline. I did not have, I don't know, anything. I was coming as a broken person who was hands open, asking to receive something, desperately not wanting to pour into anyone else. And instead, God asked me to do this. And I said, okay. I didn't even say, yes, I'm so happy to serve you. I was like, and God changed everything for me. My heart was changed, my interest, my attitude, my abilities, all the things that I was asking for, he met. He provided me friends. He provided me support and leaders. He provided me the means of being able to get there. All of these things like supernaturally were paved for me. And so the biggest thing that I want to say in all of this, and what I keep referencing, this is the title of my little talk, and it's also my word of the year, is rise up. I pick a word of the year every year, and sometimes I really lean into it and pay attention to it, and sometimes I forget after a few months what I was even supposed to be thinking about. But this year my words were rise up, because I wanted to continue this forward motion, and I wanted to be inspired by things like the rising of the sun. It happens every day, and it is beautiful, and it is intense. And I wanted to rise from my bed with intention and tackle the day. I wanted to rise up to the challenge. I wanted to rise up like a plant coming out of the ground. And that's what I feel like God did for me here. There's a quote that I like, and I'm not sure of the origin of the quote. It may be Christine Kane, it may be someone else. There's some debate, and I don't really care about that as much. But it basically goes, sometimes you're in a dark place, right? And it feels like you have been buried. But maybe instead you were actually planted and you need to bloom. And this is a metaphor. I actually, when I practiced this, I went on and on and on about it. But essentially, sometimes you do feel like you're in a dark place, right? Life is messy and it's hard, and you never know what things are going to wipe you out and put you in a state of depression or paralysis or frustration, where you feel like, I am ineffective in my life and I cannot be asked to do a single thing more than what I'm doing. It's dark, it's stank, it's dirty. You feel like you're drowning or like you're buried alive, and there is no hope. I tend to go toward when I'm upset, I lean into there's no hope, and I go despairing, and I don't run towards light. I don't run towards truth. I tend to wallow in the darkness and just feel that pain. But the thing about a seed is it has to be in a dark, dank, dirty place to grow. If you remove the seed from that environment, it will wither and die, and it will not produce fruit. And so if you leave it there in what seems like a bad place, nothing else wants to be in that kind of situation, really. But if you leave the seed there and you cultivate it, then it can grow. And that's what I saw for myself. I was in a dark place. I struggled even more than you know in my motherhood journey at the time, in my marriage at the time, in my desire for connection. These were things that were heavy burdens on me. And I felt like there's no way that God can use that. There's no way I can be effective as a leader because of these things. And despite that, while in the middle of that, God used that and brought out a fruit in me. And I can't say, oh, this has been like a super successful ministry and like, look at how great we did. Our numbers or our stats are like, this is not that kind of measurable thing. If anything, we have fewer moms now than we did when I started. But that isn't really how I'm counting growth. I can say that God did a work in me, that I was the one that grew, that I changed, that I had this honestly life-changing experience on this side of things. And I don't know if you've had a life-changing experience, if you have had some deep, meaningful growth from your time in MOPS. But I can say that I have, that God did a work in me. So all of this to say, wherever you are right now, maybe it's great. Maybe you're in a pretty good place. But it seems more likely that with what's going on with 2020, I keep calling 2020 a dumpster fire of a year because it is back to back to back chaos. Maybe you're struggling. Maybe you feel like you are in a dark place, or maybe this is a difficult season. Honestly, doing stuff when you have little kids is hard, okay? It is insanely hard, and people don't talk about it enough and don't give moms enough credit because it's hard to get out of bed, to get out the door, to be present in conversations, to remember anything. I forgot something super important a few weeks ago that was devastating for me just because mom brain. And I was so sure I would remember, and I could not, even though it was really important. Motherhood is a challenging season. It has these amazing highs, right? Having that baby in your arms for the first time, watching them learn to walk, watching them learn to say words. My daughter is 20 months and she can say, I love you. And it is my favorite phrase in the human language. I lala. I can't handle it. It's amazing. There are these beautiful highs, but it can also be low. It will bring you to the end of yourself, seeing how you can't control everything and you can't make everything perfect for your kids. And you can't guarantee that your kids are always going to be these awesome little angels. Sometimes they go out and they are little devils in the street, and then you have to answer for it. There are no guarantees. My 1-year-old broke his leg at MOPS. Like, there is no promise of anything. We see that even more now. Okay, we couldn't have predicted a pandemic. We couldn't have predicted everyone having to homeschool for 3 months, people being out of work, businesses closing, the economy tanking. I mean, this is a crazy time. There's no guarantees for any of it. And so if you're in a dark situation, right, instead of looking at it as though you've been buried, imagine you've been planted. In fact, one of my favorite agricultural metaphors here, I mean, who would have thought that manure, okay, the actual crap of animals, was going to be the thing? Like, somebody's like, hey, let's smear this on our crop, and I bet you I can get a really good potato out of it. Like, no, I would not have thought of that. That is not what I would have done, okay? But this is a miracle of how things work, that God takes the waste, the thing that we think is absolutely worthless, and uses it to bring forth something that is valuable, that is beautiful, that is lasting, that is important. And so it's a long metaphor, okay? This I understand. But like, what is the crap in your life that you're like, this is useless. This is not effective. I cannot lead. I cannot step into this opportunity in front of me, because you're standing there and you're looking at your life and it's like, here's my really long list of reasons why I am not qualified to do whatever is in front of me. And whatever that list is that you're thinking, here's my crap and all the reasons why I cannot possibly step into this, I cannot rise up. And I can tell you that if God can take literal crap and use it to grow an incredible harvest, beautiful flowers, beautiful fruits and vegetables and things, I promise you he can do so much more with you. That's the end of that really weird metaphor, okay? So there's this one other thing that I want to say, and that there's a phrase, and I think I probably mention this every time I talk to you guys because it's so deeply ingrained in me in its wrongness. But people love to talk about how you are enough, right? Whatever is going on with your kids, you are enough for your kids. You know, you feel like you're less than, or you're worried about your appearance, and none of that matters because you yourself are enough. This is a message that I can't get behind. I really hate it, and I don't agree. And from a Christian and a biblical standpoint, it's not there. Because what we see over and over and over again is when people try to do things on their own, right? Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Be a self-made man or self-made woman, right? That self-sufficiency, I can do it all. I can have it all. I can be the best. I can be perfect. Think of a time you tried to be perfect, right? You had a really bad day with your kids and you're like, today's the day I'm going to be better. I'm going to be a perfect mom. I'm not going to freak out on my kids. I'm not going to lose my cool. I got it together. Even if on the outside you got everything right, you did not freak out. On the inside, there's still a struggle. The heart is still not perfect. Even if you can pretend on the outside, we still are going to battle our own selfish impulses, our own weaknesses, our own sin pattern. That's still inside of us. We may never have murdered anybody, but we have hated someone before. And Jesus says it's the same thing. So this idea that you could be enough, it's not true. We aren't designed to be entirely isolated and independent and able to handle everything on our own. We were made to rely on God and to live in community with each other. And so most of our meetings are not this, biblical, this preachy, right? They're usually a lot more practical. But I can't end the year without saying this one thing, that we are not enough on our own. That the Bible says that all of our best efforts, when we throw in our absolute best, that it is still filthy rags to him. It's disgusting, because on our own, we are still broken people who need grace. We can have a good marriage and good kids and a good job and all the success in the world, and in the end, know that we were missing something, that there is this key essential element that is absent, and that element is God and his grace and his forgiveness and that community, right? We can't live at peace in the world with each other without living at peace this way. And you can see it outside. You can see it on the news that we are broken and we are trying to fix things from our own selves, but not from the inside out. I could not have done this job, this ministry on my own. I would have failed. It would have been a disaster. And the only reason I can stand here after 4 years and say, wow, is because it's wow God, not wow me. I was not super awesome. He did the work in me. There's so much more I want to say on that. But an important distinction is that this is the essence of the gospel. And it's not just for people who are non-believers. We have some who don't go to church, who are not religious. And I want to challenge you to think about that and to think through the areas of your life where you see something missing. And if you have questions, to bring them to your friends who are believers and to see what they say. But it is also a message for believers. The gospel is just as important for believers as it is for non-believers, because it is still what empowers us. It's still what gets us through these days. We are not going to be able to go back out into the world post-coronavirus and just be self-sufficient and we got it figured out now. Like, we don't have anything figured out. Like, that's what we should be learning during this time, is we don't know a lot about the world and about ourselves, and we're going to need to rely on God and to turn to God every day. Grace for today and grace for tomorrow. It is not our own strength that's going to get us anywhere. So I want to challenge you to rise up. What's in front of you that you've been too afraid or looking at all the excuses and reasons why you should not do it? And I'm not saying whatever it is that you must do it, but I'm telling you that your weaknesses are things that you can still grow in, that the hard things are sometimes, maybe it is the fertilizer that is cultivating a good crop in you.